There seems to be an increase in the abduction of students in northern Nigeria. While the Nigerian troops are on the trail to rescue the 287 students taken hostage from a government primary and secondary school in Kaduna State on Thursday last week, armed men have kidnapped 15 pupils from a boarding school in Sokoto. The men broke into the Islamic seminary in the village of Gidam Bakuso in Sokoto State on Saturday and seized 15 children from the hostel as they slept. It was the third incident of mass kidnapping in northern Nigeria since late last week, when more than 200 people, mostly women and children, were abducted by suspected fighters in Borno State. But before we bring in our panel of analysts on the show, let's take a listen to this report put together by our Rice correspondent, Nisi Gabriel.
Nigeria's Vice President Kashim Shettima arrives in Kaduna State and is being received by Governor Obasani alongside senior government officials. The Vice President is here to commiserate with community leaders, families of the kidnapped school children and stakeholders of Kuriga community, where hundreds of school children were abducted from the LEA primary and government secondary schools. Vice President Shettima assures parents of the kidnapped children that President Tinubu is equal to the task of ensuring the safe return of their kids.
The President was personally pained by what happened, and he has instructed the security agencies to leave no stone unturned until we return our kids back to their parents. He is in regular contact with the governor of Kaduna State. Today so far, he has spoken with the governor 4 times. He has spoken with me 3 times about how far with the rescue of the kids. He rest assured that the President is equal to the task. The very essence of the existence of government is to secure the lives and properties of the citizens. He has tasked the entire security architecture in the country to go all out and get back our kids safely.
Meanwhile, Governor Obasani expresses optimism about the progress of the rescue efforts of the abducted school children. However, he cautions the media to be careful in their reportage to avoid risking the lives of the kids in captivity.
I would like to also caution the media to be very careful in the way they make their own reports. Because at this critical time, we have to avoid politicizing this very unfortunate incident. What is important to us is the safety of the children. And of course, we cannot allow anyone to jeopardize the safety of the children that were kidnapped. The community have been very cooperative. They are working with Kaduna State government, working with the relevant security agencies, and I can say that we are making some progress. But we are not going to disclose what we have been doing because, like I said, it's not about politics, it's the issue of security. And here in Kaduna, we don't politicize the issue of security.
Thereafter, the Vice President and the Governor of Kaduna State went into a closed-door meeting to properly interface with stakeholders from Kuriga community led by Itsu Chukun. It is hoped that in no distant time, the school children regain their freedom and reunite with their parents. Nisi Gabriel, Arise News, Kaduna.
Joining us now on the morning show is Major General IBM Haruna, retired, former Federal Commissioner for Information and Culture, and Terence Kuanum, National Coordinator, National Coalition Against Terrorism. Good morning, General. Good morning, Mr. Kuanum, for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Dr. Ruben. And good morning, Ayo, number 5.
Thank you. Well, let me start with a generic question. The Tinubu government had been telling us through the spokespersons that, look, there is hope, that banditry, insurgency had reduced. In fact, one prominent government official even said, when it happens these days, it's an aberration. But consistently, we keep seeing that the problem has not disappeared, particularly the kidnapping of students in schools and their teachers. Why is it that the problem is so intractable? What is it that government should do that government is not doing to properly give the people of Nigeria hope? Let's start with you, General, and then Mr. Kuanum can also, give us his perspective. General, thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much for inviting me. I do not share the echo. Let me continue. I do not share the optimism about situation improving. If anything, it will probably get worse because the economy is getting into some tatters and disorientation. There is going to be continuous unemployment as a result. There is hunger in the country. There is unemployment. And I think all this fundamentally goes back to the fact that for 10 years we have been trying to rein in banditry and terrorism and all that. And I believe fundamentally that the Nigerian state has not gotten it right, but it started right because fundamentally internal and domestic security is functionally that of the Nigerian police force. It is not that of the Nigerian armed forces. The security must be with the police in all aspects because they live with the people communicate with them, they interact with them far more than the Nigerian military that seem to be looked upon now as being necessarily in the forefront of this state of disorder and insecurity. I think that the Nigerian state must go back to the very basic fundamental. When before independence and soon after independence, it was known and realized that internal and domestic security must be maintained by the Nigerian police. They were very well equipped or being trained, including sending the mopols to troubled areas like Malaya in those days. And I think what we have now is that there's no cohesion in providing security, and we should therefore go back to retrain, re-equip, reorganize the Nigerian police force, such that the governors who are now primarily responsible for security in their state, where in those days, compared to the size of the states of these days, they were the district officers or assistant district officers. The governor was equivalent, perhaps, at best, a major at the highest. Now we have educated, highly educated advisors, where governors have many advisors who really do not themselves are in sync with the requirements of security. Therefore, the optimism being expressed that things will get better after 10 years of battling with it is not likely to do so unless we go back to the fundamental functional reorganization of the Nigerian police and while it's functioning under proper statutory acts that empowers the governors to be the prime movers of security in their state. Until we do that, I don't think we will anchor the provision of security, peace, preservation of life and property, and employment, which are all founded from land. Our land now is not secure. Farmers or other users of land to move the industries and the economy are not secure to run their business. So the country is not secure. And therefore, I think that unless we go back to the fundamentals, rearrangement of the law, giving functions to the proper institutions of state to do their work, we are going nowhere. We will continue to dance around the subject matter and the purposes of government for a long time to come.
Mr. Kuanum, your view, your perspective.
Yeah, thank you very much, Dr. Abate. You know, the issue we have at hand at the moment is quite sad, but it's because the military has given us the impression for so long a time that this war is almost coming to an end, and that has made our governors, mostly in the north, not to be able to learn from the mistakes from the scenarios of what has happened in other states, because especially the situation in Kaduna was a situation where threats were made, but they had that confidence that they had security, which we later learned was just 20 military personnel. And if we look at the wave, these boys come into attack in their numbers, with RPGs, with the same AK-47s that the military are carrying. It was practically impossible to have stopped that kind of thing. And if we recall, the school had no network. When even reporters got to the school, when this incident happened, they have to come back to Kaduna to find their reports. And the military base that was close to that school was 35 minutes away. So it was a very difficult situation, and it was shocking that they couldn't take that advice, that threat seriously, to have moved the students to the city to write those exams. And the same thing is happening in other parts of Sokoto. 7 local governments in Sokoto practically are in the hands of these bandits, and they can attack at any time, and so many other places in the north. And if we go to places where these incidents have happened, like in Zamfara, after 1 year that the school was even reopened, it was just less than half of the students that were able to return back, because these kidnappings lead to a lot of trauma for both the parents and the students. And some of these ladies even get pregnant in the hands of these bandits. So it's a very bad situation that we're not being cautious about it. We're expressing too much confidence at the time we're not supposed to be expressing, because these boys are taking our territories. They are currently in charge of so many situations. And they'd even run ambushes on our military sometimes because of the numbers they have. So it was a very careless attitude on the side of the authorities to have taken those threats lightly for these situations to happen. It's very, very sad that these things keep coming back to us, but most times it's from the mistakes of the people in authority who don't take most of these intels that are gathered seriously. But moving forward, we really need to be more proactive. We really need to be abreast of this situation, and most of the schools that are in these terrains needs to be shut down for them to be moved to the cities. Like if we look at the situation in Borno, where the federal government gets quarters Mungunu, who is 200 kilometers away from Maiduguri, has been moved to Maiduguri for the students to be safe and are going to school. And so those situations have to take place in several places in the north, where these schools need to be shut down and moved to the cities for these students to be able to go to school. Because if we keep insisting on that these schools are reopened in those dangerous territories, we are going to keep having these things on our hands. Because when they happen, we still pay those ransoms to collect these children in large figures, and which is what these people want. And they always prefer going to kidnap these students because they make headlines. There's a lot of agitations in the society. They are giving attention immediately and XYZ. And so they prefer kidnapping these students more than kidnapping passengers in buses and XYZ. So we should be more careful the way we are opening our schools in the north and how we are conducting security around the schools, because even the Safe Schools program that we have with the civil defense, they are not properly equipped to be able to stand these bandits in the bush yet. And so those programs also need to be re-equipped to be able to stand and protect the schools like the program has envisaged and all of that.
Kuanum. Let me start with General Haruna. Now, when I hear you talk about during your time, the police was better equipped. And when I hear Mr. Kuanum, he's now talking about the military, that the military is not telling us the truth. A lot of, perhaps, responsibility he's giving to the military. The first question then would be, whose responsibility is it? Just for clarity, whose responsibility is it, or whose primary responsibility is it to secure lives and properties, especially our school children who are being abducted in these areas in the north? I'll ask you that. And I'll come to Mr. Kuanum. You mentioned a number of things. First of all, you say that they're not using, the military isn't using intelligence gathered. What is this? Do we have intelligence? Because when we have almost back-to-back these 3 incidents, it cannot be that nothing was known of it. The military or whoever it was that was responsible for securing that area didn't have a clue as to these incidents happening or a threat of this happening in order to mitigate that. So I'd like you to maybe share with what is the state of intelligence gathering in our country currently? Is there anything like that? And then you talk about the state, the Safe School Initiative. We've also mentioned that a number of times here. What is the current status of that? Has it failed? Because by you saying, let's close the schools in those areas and move everything to the city, it's an indication of a failure to secure lives and properties in rural areas. So should we just have urban areas in Nigeria since we are unable to secure these places? I'll start to General Haruna, please, first of all.
Well, I had said a few things earlier. I don't know whether you got me, but let me repeat myself, that I don't share the optimism that we are organized and sharing responsibilities to the agencies of government properly. Properly in the sense that the hierarchy and the sharing of functions to ensure security of property and life and industries is wrongly or dysfunctionally arranged. So whether you have intelligence and operational groups, the fact is that they will not be coordinated and they cannot impart the required security objectives. I mean, it's like having the legs and bodies or fingers of the anatomy of the person wrongly put around the body. So we are saying we have to go back to the drawing board. Let the police be organized and be functional to do its job. It is not the business of bringing schools by governments to the city, because people have to operate in the rural areas. Industry operates in the rural areas. You cannot bring all land functions to the cities. Come on, let us organize the police to do police work, the army to do army work, the Boy Scouts and Girl Guides to be engaged in youth development. We should reorganize, call it restructuring, whatever it is. The fact is, the government must be government. The state governments, if the constituents of the federal government, they must be able to secure their territory. They must have sufficient police force to do all the functions you require in order to impart security of property, of land, of development, and school children. We just haven't got it right. We are expecting too much from the military. It's not their function. They can perform their function in aid of the police, but let the police be on the ground. Let the governors be on the ground. Let the security fund and whatever security materials they have be functional in obtaining the objectives. Not having 50 grandstanding vehicles in government house and governors. Let's just get it right. Tell the government let them organize with the people and get this division or constitutional law making the attainment of security achievable. The way it is now is in anarchy. It cannot be achieved. Whether you have intelligence or you put capital funds in buying more equipment for the army and the police, it will not go to any positive end in ensuring sustainable security. That is what I'm saying.
All right. Thank you very much, General Haruna. I'll come to you now, Mr. Kuanum. I hope you remember the questions I asked earlier.
Yeah, thank you. You know, the reality we have on ground at the moment is to secure our students from school. And between 2014 to this last kidnapping, there is 1,680 and counting that we have on our hands. And like the general is saying, whether if we fail to move the schools from where they are in danger, we'll keep having this on our hands, because what the general is suggesting is a long-term solution. At the moment, as we speak, we need our children to be in school. We know that so many of these states in the north, most of the local governments are completely in the hands of bandits. So how can you allow children to go to schools that are open where bandits can strike at any moment, as we have on our hands now? In Sokoto, where there was kidnapping, 7 local governments are completely in the hand of bandits. If we go to Borno State, if we could recall, the governor of Borno State built homes in Dikwa for people to go back to their ancestral homes. What happened? The bandits came and razed down those homes completely. Nothing happened about it. If we go to places like Kagawa, one of the biggest local government we have in this country, in Borno State, what is happening there? The people who are living there are paying royalties to the bandits, to the terrorists, for them to be able to move in those places. If we move to Mongunu, if we go to Mongunu, it's only in Mongunu IDP camp that people are living in Mongunu. Every other community in Mongunu local government, nobody is living there. And several other examples in Zamfara and so many places like that. So how can you open schools in those kind of environment at the moment? Even if we are going back to restructuring, as the general is suggesting, it cannot be immediately, because we already know that even the territories that have been captured by the military are supposed to be held by the police. Are they being able to do that since the beginning of this war? No, because we don't have sufficient personnel enough in the Nigerian police force to be able to do this. And what most of the personnel we have, what are they doing? They are guiding our VIPs and XYZ. And so we have enough challenges on our hands to be able to restructure. But we are discussing the immediate problem that these children should be saved. Our children should be able to go back to school. So if we fail to move these children to where they are safe, for them to be able to go to school and feel free with a good psychology to be able to study, then we'll keep having this situation on and off as it is at the moment. Intels are being generated, yes, but like the situation we have in Kaduna, the intel was generated, threats were even given, the place has no network, they provided security for them, we learned it was 20 military personnel, and it wasn't enough when the attack came. And when the attack came, in that situation, you can't be able to call. In that situation, the military base was 35 minutes away. We are in a war situation and we are completely relying on the military at the moment. So calling on the police and XYZ to be restructured, to be able to go into these territories and face these guys at the moment is practically impossible. And that is why we keep relying on our military, whose efforts are a bit appreciated at the moment.
Okay. I mean, Mr. Terrence Carter, good to see you again. And General, good to see you again, sir. So I will just go to some facts about what happened. Prior to this time, the original site of the school, because of suspected banditry activity, was moved, and they were merged with this primary school in which they were attacked. When that was done, what was the sort of like stationary military position to be able to ensure that that same school was protected? Because you're talking about remoteness. That's not the original site of the school. The original site of the school was more far-flung, but it had to be merged to this primary school, which they felt was even safe. But now they've been attacked. So after this merger, what was the measure put in place? and the response time protocol to be able to ensure, because you said military was 35, was possibly a couple of kilometers away, 35 minutes away, but it took the military about 2 hours to get in there. Secondly, as regards those that will hold this place and the deal breaker, I'd like to give kudos to the vigilante this morning, because they tried to engage those people, but they didn't have enough sophisticated weapons. So should the vigilante be allowed to carry sophisticated weapon? And what's your take about state police? Because if those vigilante guys had sophisticated weapon, probably they would have been able to engage them better, but they couldn't. So those two insights, sir. And I would like General's perspective on state police. That should be the question for General. But Mr. Terence Kuanum, those questions are espoused. Mr. Terence Kuanum, answer first, sir.
Yeah, thanks so much, Rufai. You know, the measure that took place, like I'm telling you, still did not provide enough security for those students. But they were satisfied with that arrangement because the impression that this terrorist has been depleted and there are no such threats is what led to most of these decisions. And that was why I was saying that impression should be discarded. We have a lot of terrorists occupying our territories and are operating freely. So if you are taking such decision of relocating school, it should be within areas that are well guarded by the security and in urban settlements, because we are experiencing low security challenges in our urban centers at the moment. So it is safer to bring these children closer to these territories than to that kind of arrangement that was made. And when that arrangement that was made, like I told you, 20 military personnel were there, and they were unable to stand those guys because they always come in very large numbers and they carry the same weapons, sometimes more sophisticated weapons than even what our military are holding. And the issue of state police and vigilante, yes, we commend the vigilantes, but like on and on we are saying that we are more than due for a state police at the moment, because state police or not, every state now is trying to organize a volunteer guard or sort of a thing, using public funds to establish them. And what I even see in these volunteer guards that are being set up is rather a deep trap for these volunteers who join these forces, because if we look at the situation of what happened in Zamfara, 60 were killed in a day, 40 the other day, who tried to even confront this guy. So I feel it's better to use those public funds and equip them as sophisticated as every other force in this country, which might be able to caution this effect a little bit in every state. Because if we keep wasting public funds on volunteer guards and all of this, we'll still end up killing most of our young people who might have even use their energy to do better things for the development of our societies, because we are rather killing them. Most of these guards that are being formed by these states, they end up losing their lives in trying to secure their places because they are not well equipped, they are not well trained, and all of that. So I feel that we should quickly rush and set up state police and equip them enough to be able to secure our communities.
Conversation about state police has come up to roost again. Do you think, what's your take on that? And do you also think this vigilante, we should empower them in such a way that these vigilantes too can be able to carry sophisticated weapons, because they are the ones closer to the citizenry? General, sir. General IBM Haruna.
Yes. Well, I don't really know what the issue is being discussed. Is it the security of the children in their localities, or is it the restructuring or the structuring of the hierarchy of security? Because I'm hearing about moving schools from their localities to other areas where they presume those areas are not in the threat zone. And besides, the burden that will be placed on those who are responsible for the children, and the whole functionality of imparting education. If the problem is security being provided for children in their states and localities, or in Nigeria as a whole, I've said all those are components of the responsibilities of the states and their local governments. They should be probably empowered to perform their functions. But the decision to move a school from one end of the town to another end of the town does not solve the fundamental issue, which is security. Because it's not only the students, because they have been taken away, they become the prime issue. No, there are other industries and personnel who are involved. They are not kidnapped, but they are involved. They can't go to farm, they cannot produce, there can be no employment, they cannot go to factories because these are all involved. So I'm saying the fundamental issue is not the capacity of bandits to get together, gang together and take 200 children or whatever. Yes, it is painful, it is unwarranted, but the issue is that fundamentally there is no security counter threat by having an effective security force that can counter the place. And that it is dysfunctional to have a government where the governor has been elected, is responsible for the security of the people and life and property, and is not sufficiently empowered, or he is not sufficiently focused to bring about security, not just to children, but to farmers and industrial workers. So we must have the fundamental basic right. Then we can expect results. But for 10 years, we have been grappling with this kidnapping, terrorism, this and that. We are not seeing the end of it. We are expanding the purchase of equipment and manpower for the armed forces, but it's dysfunctional. So let's get the first things first. I know the immediate effect or the immediate requirement is for the security forces to restore the status quo of peace and return these children. We know that. But they cannot go back to the same fundamental environment and expect that something different in the future will secure them. We have to secure and ensure that we have prepared the proper functional division and effectiveness of the security forces, whether they are collecting intelligence that is relevant or not. We have to make sure that they are organized to deliver, whether intelligence or use of power or surveillance to good effect. So they should get the children back, yes, but not get them back to put them in another place where the situation will change and perhaps the threat will now move to the urban area where you've taken them, taking them to.
This morning, Major
General.
There
is the short term, there is the long term. There is the short term, there is the long term.
Yes, sir.
The short term is get them back and reinforce them.
All right. Thank you very much for your insights this morning, Major General IBM Haruna retired and Mr. Terence Kuanum. Thank you for your time.